Welcome. Tonight we slip softly into another time, another place. The heart of the Ottoman Empire at its peak. The first blush of dawn settles over the domes and spires of Topkapi Palace, a pale golden light gliding over marble courtyards. The Bosphorus below catches the morning, shimmering like silk in slow motion. You breathe in the faint scent of jasmine from the palace gardens, mingled with the warm earthy aroma of freshly baked bread from the kitchens. Somewhere far away, a call to prayer flows gently over the city, its echoes bouncing off minarets and stone walls. Here, in this world, you are inside the royal enclosure, an outsider in theory. But tonight, a quiet observer with permission to wander. You hear the soft slap of leather sandals as servants move briskly but without hurry. Guards in ornate kaftans stand motionless, their spears catching little flares of light. And though the air feels serene, you know this place is never truly still. Decisions made here ripple across 3 continents. You'd probably not last a week in this palace, not because it's harsh in the way you might imagine, but because every hour here is dense with ceremony, rules, and unspoken codes. Even the way you walk is noticed. The marble beneath your feet has been polished by centuries of such watchful steps. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from right now? And what time is it for you? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The palace is already awake. In the kitchens, great copper cauldrons simmer with spiced stews destined for the Sultan's breakfast. Yes, breakfast here might be as elaborate as a feast. Pages scurry between halls, balancing silver trays laden with delicate porcelain cups. In the imperial council chamber, the divan room, attendants adjust cushions and unfurl rich carpets. Even in these earliest hours, there is a choreography that never falters. You wander deeper into the courtyards. The first courtyard is broad and open, its trees whispering with the early breeze. It is here that petitions will later be brought, each one a plea for justice. Each one a story from far-off lands, Anatolian villages, North African ports, Balkan towns. The empire is a patchwork quilt, and the palace is the needle that keeps it sewn. Historians still argue whether Suleiman's mornings began with private reflection or immediate business. But here, in this imagined dawn, he is not yet visible. You imagine him in a quiet chamber, perhaps reading a letter from a distant governor, or considering the latest report from the imperial astronomers. This is a man who will come to be known as Kanuni the Lawgiver, yet, in this moment, he is simply a ruler waking to the weight of his responsibilities. A little-known detail. The scent of roses was said to follow Suleiman wherever he walked. Some claim it was because palace attendants sprinkled rosewater on the stone floors before he entered, a subtle luxury that filled the air without overpowering it. You picture that faint aroma drifting behind him, as he moves from one hall to the next. From the upper terrace, you look over the water to the city beyond the walls, Constantinople, still carrying its Byzantine bones under Ottoman finery. Market stalls are already bustling, and fishermen have been out since before first light. The Sultan's world is one of grand vision, but it is built upon the lives of countless ordinary people. Their rhythms feed his power, just as his rule shapes their fate. As the sun climbs, the palace's quieter corners fill with gentle sounds. The scratch of a reed pen on parchment, the rustle of silk robes, the cooing of doves nesting high in the eaves. There is no hurry here, and yet, everything moves with purpose. You notice the way servants step aside as high officials pass, the way guards exchange a glance but never a word. And now, in the distance, a subtle stir. The first sign that the Sultan is making his way toward the day's duties. His path will lead him through the courtyards, past the council chambers, and eventually into the private garden where only a select few may join him. You are not among them, but for tonight, you are close enough to feel the shift in the air as he approaches. The journey back through Suleiman's life begins far from the marble splendor of Topkapi in the quieter city of Manisa. You find yourself walking along narrow cobbled streets, the air touched with the scent of figs drying in the late summer sun. Here the hills roll gently, patched with olive groves and vineyards, a softer world than the imperial capital. It is the early 1500s, and you are in a place where the pace of life is gentler, though still shaped by the pulse of the empire. This is the city where young princes are sent to govern as part of their training, and where Suleiman spent formative years under the watchful eye of tutors and governors. He is not yet the Magnificent. He is simply a boy, though one carrying the weight of extraordinary expectation. In the palace residence here, you see him bent over manuscripts, studying Arabic calligraphy one moment and military history the next. Historians still argue whether Suleiman's education was more scholarly than martial, but it's clear he was shaped by both. You watch as he listens intently to his tutor reciting poetry from Persian classics, then later, steps into the courtyard to practice archery. His bow is finely made, its curve gleaming in the sunlight, and though his arms are slender, his arrows strike the target with a precision that makes his instructors nod in quiet approval. A little-known detail, Manisa was known not only for its learning but for its medicinal herbs. The young prince would have walked past apothecaries whose shelves brimmed with dried blossoms, pungent roots, and glass bottles of perfumed oil. It is not hard to imagine him inhaling the sharp tang of mint or the calming scent of chamomile as he passed, perhaps unaware that these fragrances would one day blend with the rosewater of his imperial court. The rhythm of his youth here is one of lessons and observation. You follow him as he rides through the countryside, the clop of his horse's hooves echoing against the hills. Villagers bow as he passes, respectful, but not yet awed. He is still learning what it means to carry the empire's legacy. At night, under a sky scattered with bright Anatolian stars, he may have wondered about the distant lands his ancestors had conquered, and the unknown worlds still beyond reach. In the gardens of the Manisa Palace, you notice the interplay between discipline and curiosity. Suleiman walks with a scroll in hand, tracing lines of ink with his finger, occasionally pausing to speak to a gardener or watch a fountain's ripples. This is the calm before the weight of command, a rare season when learning is the only real duty, and yet, the empire's reach is never far away. Couriers arrive with news from Istanbul and reports from frontier governors. You can almost see his mind knitting these threads together, how geography, politics, and culture all shape the Sultanate's future. Even as a boy, he must have understood that his role was not just to rule, but to preserve and expand an intricate web of lands and peoples. There is a softness to Manisa that Topkapi lacks. The calls to prayer rise over a smaller skyline, the streets feel less guarded, the gardens wilder. But in this quiet provincial city, the young prince learns a lesson that will follow him to the throne. Power is not built overnight, and leadership is as much about listening as it is about commanding. As the day fades in Manisa, you walk with him toward the palace gates. The sky burns gold and pink, and a cool breeze carries the scent of the nearby mountains. Somewhere beyond those hills lies the capital, and further still, the countless towns and ports that make up the empire. He doesn't know it yet, but his journey from this quiet city will take him to the farthest edges of that vast realm. You leave the gentle slopes of Manisa behind and follow the young Suleiman into a new chapter of his life, one marked by responsibility and the first taste of authority. The road to power begins not with coronations or grand ceremonies, but with the quiet day-to-day governance of a provincial post. You find yourself in the town of Kaffa on the Crimean coast, the salt of the Black Sea thick in the air. Suleiman, still barely in his 20s, has been appointed as a governor, a position meant as both training and test. This is no ceremonial role. Here, the merchants in the bazaars bring him disputes over trade, farmers seek judgment on land boundaries, and soldiers await his orders to patrol the volatile borderlands. Historians still argue whether these early governorships were truly independent, or merely exercises under the tight control of Istanbul. But watching him now, you see that he takes his role seriously. He listens to both noble and commoner, his expression calm and his voice steady. The same boy who once lingered over Persian poetry now weighs the grain supply against the needs of the Port-S shipyards, a little-known detail. During his time in these posts, Suleiman was said to have kept a personal journal, jotting down observations on human nature, the habits of merchants, and even the weather's effect on trade. Whether this journal still exists is uncertain. But the idea of a young prince quietly sketching the rhythms of daily life fits well with what history tells us of his thoughtful character. From Kaffa, his path leads to other provincial seats, Saruhan, Idorn, each with its own pace and politics. You walk beside him as he rides through narrow streets lined with timber houses, the sound of his horse's hooves mixing with the shouts of vendors and the laughter of children darting between stalls. These are not the marble corridors of Topkapi here. The Sultan's name is spoken in a mix of awe and distance, and the governor stands as its living representative. The challenges are constant. A delayed shipment of grain can spark unrest. A merchant's quarrel can escalate into a feud that threatens the peace. Suleiman learns quickly that ruling is less about issuing commands and more about understanding people's motivations, their fears, ambitions, and pride. Some evenings, after the day's disputes are settled, he walks the city walls. The sea stretches endless and dark, the horizon dotted with the faint lanterns of fishing boats. You sense him thinking not only about the territory in his care, but about the greater empire, its borders shifting like sand under the pressure of enemies and allies alike. And then comes the summons. A message from Istanbul, carried by a swift courier, informing him of his father Selim I's health and the growing whispers of succession. The air changes around him. The weight he has been training to bear is no longer hypothetical. You see it in the way he pauses before sealing his reply, his hand lingering on the wax stamp as though acknowledging that the next steps will shape the rest of his life. It's a quiet departure from his provincial post. No parades, just a steady journey back toward the capital. But beneath that calm exterior, every mile brings him closer to the threshold of ultimate power. You ride with him along dusty roads, past vineyards and rivers, the hum of cicadas giving way to the distant clamor of the city. Ahead lies Topkapi once more, but this time, he returns not as a student of governance, but as the designated heir, ready, or as ready as anyone could be, to step into the shadow of the throne. The city comes into view like a slow, unfolding tapestry. Constantinople, the seat of the Ottoman world. You cross the Galata waterside, where ships from every corner of the empire unload their goods. Sacks of coffee from Yemen, spices from India, furs from the Black Sea. The air hums with the languages of merchants, Turkish, Greek, Arabic, Armenian, Italian, all mixing into a soft, constant murmur. You follow Suleiman through the palace gates, where the guards bow with a formality that feels sharper now. His father, Suleiman, is gone, and with the hush of a funeral procession still lingering in the city's mood, Suleiman steps into the role for which he has been preparing his whole life. There is no thunderclap or roar of crowds here, just the solemn acknowledgement of a new sultan taking his place. Historians still argue whether Suleiman felt ready for this moment. Some imagine him fully confident, already envisioning the empire's future. Others believe he inherited the crown with quiet trepidation, knowing the immense weight that came with it. Whatever his private thoughts, the public image is clear, composed, deliberate, and regal. A little-known detail. On the day of his accession in 1520, it is said that Suleiman received envoys while wearing plain white robes, a sign of humility before God and the people. This understated beginning would stand in contrast to the grand, jewel-covered image that would later define him. You move with him through the palace, past courtyards where fountains murmur into marble basins and the scent of rosewater mingles with the smoke of incense. In the council chamber, viziers gather, their silken turbans immaculate, their eyes fixed on the young ruler. They speak of border tensions, of European alliances, of the Janissaries' loyalty. You listen, noticing how Suleiman asks questions more than he gives orders, his mind gathering threads before weaving them into decisions. Beyond these walls, the city reacts to its new sultan in ways both subtle and grand. Shopkeepers place sprigs of greenery over their doors, a sign of renewal. Poets begin composing verses in his honor. At the great mosques, prayers for his reign rise into vaulted domes, carried on the breath of thousands. And yet within Topkapi, life continues in its measured rhythm. Servants sweep the same marble floors. Scribes copy the same flowing lines of Ottoman script. The imperial kitchens produce the same endless trays of food. But now, every act unfolds under a new sovereign gaze. The palace seems to breathe differently. Suleiman spends his first days not in sweeping reforms, but in observation. You see him walking through the gardens in the cool of the evening, speaking quietly with trusted advisors, sometimes pausing to watch the Bosphorus. Perhaps he is thinking of the lands still beyond his reach, or perhaps of the balance between conquest and peace. The transition is not without its tensions. The Janissaries, the elite corps of soldiers, expect gifts and signs of favor. The provinces watch carefully for any shift in policy. Rivals within the court, however discreet, are alert for opportunities. It is a delicate dance, and Suleiman moves through it with a stillness that hides the calculations behind his eyes. One night, you find him alone in a quiet chamber, a candle flickering on the low table beside him. He's reading, perhaps poetry, perhaps a historical chronicle, his lips moving silently with the words. It is a reminder that the man who now rules millions still carries the habits of the boy from Manisa, listening, learning, preparing. By the week's end, the empire has its sultan. His reign begins not with a single dramatic act, but with a calm, deliberate settling into the role. And as you walk the palace corridors beside him, you sense that every step forward from here will ripple across the map. From the deserts of Arabia to the forests of Hungary, The Golden Age has not yet begun, but its first notes are playing quietly in the background, waiting to swell into the music of history. The palace settles into a new rhythm, and you walk with Suleiman into the chambers where the empire's laws are shaped. These rooms are not grand halls filled with echoing voices. They are quieter, more deliberate spaces, lined with shelves of manuscripts, bound in leather and script so precise it feels like art. Here, the work of the Kanuni, the lawgiver, begins to take form. You watch as the young sultan meets with his chief jurists, men whose minds are trained to navigate the delicate weave of Sharia law, imperial decrees, and centuries of custom. Rolls of parchment are unrolled on low tables, each one covered in flowing lines of black ink, with margins crowded by the neat notes of scribes. There is a stillness to the room, broken only by the scratch of reed pens and the occasional clink of an inkwell being set down. Historians still argue whether Suleiman's legal reforms were driven more by his personal sense of justice or by political necessity. Was it compassion that guided him to standardize laws across the empire, so that a merchant in Damascus and a farmer in the Balkans could expect the same fairness? Or was it the practical need to hold together a realm so vast it touched 3 continents? In this moment, as he leans over the parchment, tracing a fingertip along a clause, you see both in him, empathy and strategy. A little-known detail. Some of Suleiman's decrees even reached into matters as specific as the length of a baker's loaf and the allowed price of a cup of coffee in the markets. Such small measures might seem trivial, but they were part of his belief that order in the smallest details would strengthen the entire state. You notice how he listens more than he speaks in these meetings. A Qadi, a judge from the provinces, describes the challenges of applying law in a distant mountain village. A vizier raises the question of how to balance the rights of nomadic tribes with settled farmers. Suleiman nods slowly, sometimes asking for the opinion of another advisor before speaking. His words are measured, his tone calm. Outside the council chamber, you walk into the scriptorium, where scribes are copying the latest set of edicts onto crisp sheets of paper. The smell of fresh ink lingers in the air. These documents will travel by horseback, ship, and caravan to reach distant towns where they will be read aloud in public squares. Somewhere far away, a shepherd or a shopkeeper will hear the Sultan's words for the first time and know that the law now speaks to them directly. In the palace gardens later that day, you see Suleiman strolling under the cypress trees, the sunlight dappling his path. He pauses to speak with an architect about a new mosque design, then with an aide about a request from a distant governor. The law and the land are inseparable in his mind. One shapes the other, and both must be tended like a garden. By the time the sun sets, the work of lawmaking is not complete. It never will be. But seeds are planted today that will grow for decades, long after these walls are silent. The Golden Age is taking shape, not just in battles and conquests, but in rules and principles that will give it lasting strength. As you leave the garden, the palace lamps begin to glow, their warm light spilling into the courtyards. Somewhere, a scribe is still bent over a page, finishing the day's work. The laws Suleiman writes now will travel farther than he can see from here, to mountain villages, desert outposts, and bustling ports, binding them all together with the quiet authority of ink on paper. You wake to the faint metallic clink of armor being readied, the hushed murmur of commanders conferring before the day's march. The air smells faintly of oiled leather and horse sweat, carried on the crisp wind from the east. Today you are leaving the palace walls behind to follow Suleiman's forces toward the lands of Persia, a vast and ancient realm whose history stretches back to empires older than memory. The Ottoman Empire and the Safavid dynasty share a long, jagged border. The land between them is a mosaic of plains, mountains, and fiercely independent towns. Historians still argue whether Suleiman's eastern campaigns were driven more by a desire for security or by the lure of glory. Perhaps it was both the need to secure his empire's frontiers and the irresistible pull of proving himself on the battlefield. The march begins at dawn. You ride alongside the column, the sound of hoofbeats and the creak of wooden wheels setting a steady rhythm. Soldiers in layered armor carry long spears that catch the sun like silver arrows. Standard-bearers move with practiced grace, their banners snapping in the breeze, crimson, gold, and green, each color heavy with meaning, a little-known detail. The Ottoman army's eastern campaigns often carried with them entire mobile kitchens, complete with bakers and cooks who could set up and feed thousands within hours. You catch the scent of flatbread baking on iron griddles as you pass, the smell strangely comforting amid the anticipation of the road ahead. At night, campfires flicker across the horizon like a scattering of stars brought down to earth. Suleiman moves through the camp quietly, speaking with officers, sometimes sharing a meal of bread, roasted lamb, and dates. He listens to reports of the terrain ahead, of the towns that may resist, and those that may welcome his approach. The journey east is not without hardship. The roads are rough, sometimes little more than dirt tracks winding through rocky passes. The heat of the day gives way to nights so cold the air stings your lungs. Horses stumble on loose stones, and the wagons creak under the strain of supplies. Yet the army moves on, disciplined and steady, a living river flowing toward the heart of Persia. When you reach the contested borderlands, the atmosphere shifts. Villages here bear the marks of previous conflicts. Walls patched hastily, fields left untended. In one town, elders come forward with gifts of bread and salt, a gesture of cautious welcome. In another, the gates remain barred until the army's presence cannot be ignored. Suleiman himself rides at the head of the column, his armor glinting in the sun, but his expression calm, almost unreadable. He is not here to display rage or bluster. His strength lies in the steadiness of his command. He understands that the East is not simply a battlefield. It is a cultural frontier, a meeting place of languages, faiths, and traditions that must be navigated as carefully as any campaign map. One evening, as the camp rests on the edge of a high plateau, you look out over the endless expanse of land stretching toward Persia. The stars above are so bright they seem to hum in the cold air. Suleiman stands nearby, his hands clasped behind his back, gazing into the distance. Perhaps he is imagining the cities ahead, Tabriz, Baghdad, places whose names are heavy with history. Or perhaps he is thinking of the empire he will leave behind if he falls here. When the army moves again, the road bends ever eastward, carrying you deeper into the lands where Ottoman and Safavid power press against each other like two great tides. The Golden Age is being carved not only in marble and law, but also in the dust of these long weary marches and in the quiet resolve of a ruler who knows that the fate of the empire rests as much on his patience as on his sword. The siege lines stretch before you, a slow, methodical dance of tents, catapults, and whispered plans. You find yourself at the gates of Belgrade, the great fortress city guarding the gateway between Europe and the Balkans. Suleiman's army has arrived after a long campaign, and the air hums with a mixture of tension and purpose. Belgrade's walls rise high and thick, ancient stones weathered by centuries of siege and storm. Historians still argue whether the city's fall was inevitable or if its defenders might have held longer under different circumstances. You walk along the ramparts, feeling the rough texture of the stones beneath your fingers, imagining the countless defenders who stood here, waiting for the inevitable Ottoman advance. A little-known detail. During the siege, Suleiman personally inspected the trenches each evening, sometimes under the cover of darkness, his presence a quiet reassurance to the soldiers on the front lines. It's said that he carried a small leather-bound book of poems with him, offering moments of calm amid the chaos. The attack is carefully planned, the use of artillery and mining crews working beneath the walls to undermine the city's defenses. You watch as engineers use pulleys and ropes to position massive cannons, their thunder shaking the earth. Despite the roar of battle preparations, Suleiman remains composed, issuing orders in a voice low enough to be heard only by his closest aides. The city's defenders fight fiercely, but the siege wears on, their supplies dwindling with each passing day. You sense the quiet desperation beneath their proud resistance. As families huddle in cellars and soldiers ready their last arrows, Suleiman's forces, in contrast, move with a patient determination, aware that victory here will open a new chapter for the empire's expansion into Europe. At night, the camp is alive with muted conversations and the occasional soft laughter of men trying to ease the tension. You catch the scent of spiced wine and freshly baked bread drifting from the officers' tents, a small comfort amid the looming battle. Suleiman's own tent is modest by comparison, with carpets laid carefully over the ground and a small lantern casting a warm glow. When the walls finally fall, it is not with a sudden storm but a steady, inevitable pressure. The gates give way, and Ottoman troops pour into the city. You walk beside Suleiman as he surveys the scene, soldiers securing the streets, citizens cautiously emerging from hiding, the city's pulse beginning to beat under new rulers. The capture of Belgrade is a turning point, a gateway opened wide to the heart of Europe. Yet even in triumph, Suleiman's thoughts seem far-reaching, as if already planning the next moves on a vast, unfolding chessboard. The Golden Age is expanding its borders, but it is also growing in complexity, a vast empire connected by threads of law, culture, and power. As the sun sets behind the fortress, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and gold, you realize this moment is more than just conquest. It is the slow, careful weaving of a new era, one shaped by the steady hand of a ruler, whose legacy will stretch far beyond stone walls and battlefields. The air in the palace shifts as Suleiman turns his attention from the battlefield to the arts, a quieter conquest of beauty and intellect. You follow him through shadowed halls adorned with intricate tilework, where the soft clink of calligraphy brushes echoes like whispered prayers. The Golden Age is not just about expansion, it is also about nurturing culture, and Suleiman's patronage breathes life into poets, architects, and scholars. Historians still argue whether Suleiman's own poetic works were truly his or largely penned by court poets, but the verses attributed to him speak of love, longing, and the fleeting nature of life, offering a window into the soul behind the crown. You imagine him, away from the demands of rule, sitting quietly by a fountain, the scent of orange blossoms filling the air as he composes or listens to poetry read aloud. A little-known detail, Suleiman commissioned the magnificent Suleimani Mosque, not only as a place of worship but as a complex including schools, a hospital, and a public kitchen, reflecting his vision of an empire that cared for both body and spirit. You wander with him through the mosque's courtyards, feeling the smooth marble underfoot and hearing the gentle trickle of water from the fountains. The sound is a soft counterpoint to the distant calls to prayer, mingling with the rustle of leaves in the garden. Suleiman's gaze lingers on the slender minarets piercing the sky, symbols of faith and imperial grandeur intertwined. In the workshops nearby, artisans shape tiles of deep blue and gold, each piece a tiny miracle of craftsmanship. The scent of freshly ground pigments and kill smoke reminds you that every corner of this empire hums with creativity. The palace library holds scrolls and manuscripts from across the world, Persian poetry, Greek philosophy, and Arabic science, all collected under Suleiman's watchful eye. The Sultan's court is a gathering place of minds and talents, where debates on philosophy and theology unfold gently over cups of thick coffee. Suleiman listens patiently, sometimes interjecting with a soft question or a thoughtful nod, encouraging a culture of learning that spreads beyond the palace walls. Even in moments of leisure, the ruler's presence is calming. You see him play a simple stringed instrument, its notes drifting softly through the hallways, a quiet song in an empire of many voices. The arts are a refuge, a reminder that beneath the power and politics lies a human heart seeking beauty and meaning. As dusk falls, lanterns flicker to life, casting dancing shadows on the mosque's intricate patterns. Suleiman walks slowly through the gardens, the fragrant night air wrapping around him like a gentle cloak. The Golden Age is as much a flowering of the spirit as it is of stone and sword, and you are there to witness its tender unfolding. Morning light filters softly through latticed windows as Suleiman turns his focus to the empire's vast network of trade and diplomacy. You walk beside him through the bustling bazaars of Istanbul, the scent of spices and fresh fruit mingling with the calls of merchants hawking their wares. The city is alive, a crossroads where east meets west, and countless cultures blend like colors on a painter's palette. Historians still argue how much Suleiman personally influenced foreign policy, but it's clear his reign saw the Ottoman Empire at its diplomatic peak, with envoys from Venice to Persia seeking audience in his grand palace. You glimpse scribes busy at work drafting letters in elegant script, each one a thread weaving the empire closer to allies and rivals alike. A little-known detail, Suleiman's court maintained a network of spies and informants, sometimes disguised as traders or travelers, ensuring the Sultan stayed informed of distant happenings without ever leaving his chambers. You imagine the soft footsteps of these silent observers in crowded markets and shadowed alleyways. As you wander the bazaars, you notice goods from across the known world: silk from China, fine glassware from Venice, carpets dyed in rich reds and blues. Suleiman understands that trade is more than commerce. It is the lifeblood of his empire, binding distant provinces in a shared prosperity. In the palace, you watch as the Sultan receives ambassadors, their richly embroidered robes a kaleidoscope of color. Their conversations are careful and measured, punctuated by gentle laughter and polite bows. Suleiman listens intently, his calm presence a steady anchor in the ebb and flow of negotiations. Beyond diplomacy, the empire's roads and caravans hum with movement, connecting far-flung corners like a vast web. You imagine merchants traveling for months, crossing deserts and mountains, their caravans protected by Ottoman guards, carrying goods and stories alike. As evening falls, the city quiets but never fully sleeps. The soft glow of lanterns illuminates narrow streets, and distant music drifts through open windows. Suleiman's vision extends beyond conquest. It embraces a world connected by culture, commerce, and quiet understanding. You settle in for the night, the sounds of Istanbul weaving a lullaby around you. The Golden Age shines not only in palaces and battlefields, but in these gentle moments of exchange and connection. The calm of the palace is tinged with the subtle tension of succession. You find yourself beside Suleiman as he contemplates the future of his lineage, walking slowly through the shadowed halls where portraits of ancestors peer down with quiet dignity. The question of who will inherit the empire's vast legacy is both a personal and political matter, delicate as the finest silk. Historians still argue about Suleiman's relationships with his sons, whether his favoring of Selim over Mustafa was a strategic necessity or a source of deep sorrow. You sense the weight of these choices as you hear soft footsteps echo through the corridors and catch glimpses of whispered conversations among the court's inner circle. A little-known detail: Suleiman is said to have written heartfelt poetry mourning the death of his son Mustafa, reflecting a private grief hidden beneath his public role. You imagine the Sultan reading these verses in solitude, the candlelight flickering against the walls. The palace gardens offer a quiet refuge where Suleiman meets with trusted advisors to discuss the delicate politics of succession. The scent of jasmine and the gentle rustle of leaves create a calm backdrop for conversations about alliances, rivalries, and the future stability of the empire. You notice how Suleiman listens carefully to counsel, weighing the merits of each son's character and abilities, aware that his decision will ripple through generations. The delicate balance between fatherly love and ruler's duty hangs in the air, unseen but deeply felt. In private moments, Suleiman walks alone along the palace terraces, gazing out over the Bosphorus as the sun dips below the horizon. The water's steady pulse mirrors his own thoughts, endless, deep, and full of quiet resolve. The question of succession is never far from his mind, a silent companion on the long nights. It is a reminder that even the greatest rulers must face uncertainty, and that their legacies rest not only on conquests and laws, but on the fragile bonds of family. As night falls, you feel the stillness settle over the palace, the future unwritten but held gently in Suleiman's hands. The Golden Age is at a crossroads, shaped by love, loss, and the quiet hope for what lies ahead. You awaken to the soft murmur of the imperial court, where Suleiman's laws ripple quietly through the empire like a gentle stream shaping the landscape. Today, you walk with him through the grand chambers where the wheels of justice turn, balancing tradition and innovation in a system unlike any before. Historians still debate how much Suleiman personally shaped the Qanon, the secular legal code that complemented Islamic law, but its impact is undeniable. A framework that brought order and fairness to a diverse and sprawling empire. You feel the weight of these laws in the air, as if the stones themselves remembered the countless judgments passed beneath Suleiman's reign. A little-known detail: the Qanon included regulations on everything from taxation to hunting rights, even rules about coffee houses, revealing the careful attention paid to everyday life and social harmony. You imagine Suleiman listening to reports on disputes, his calm voice guiding decisions that affected millions. In the courtroom, judges sit beneath ornate arches, robes flowing as they deliberate with measured words. The atmosphere is one of solemnity, but also of hope, that fairness and mercy might coexist in the same breath. Suleiman's vision of justice stretches beyond punishment to include welfare and protection for the vulnerable. You see the Sultan reviewing petitions brought by merchants, farmers, and scholars, his gaze steady and thoughtful. The legal system he supports weaves together the empire's many peoples, creating a shared sense of belonging and responsibility. Beyond the palace, the laws shape daily life. Marketplaces operate with trust, disputes are settled peacefully, and communities thrive under the protection of these carefully crafted rules. You sense that the empire's strength lies not only in its armies, but in the quiet power of justice, administered with wisdom and care. As evening descends, you walk alongside Suleiman through gardens, fragrant with night-blooming flowers, the soft glow of lanterns casting gentle shadows. The laws may be written, but their spirit lives in the lives of the people, a silent melody of order, fairness, and peace. The Golden Age glows not just in conquest or art, but in the enduring promise of justice held gently in the hands of a ruler who understands its true power. The palace hums with quiet anticipation as Suleiman turns his thoughts toward the empire's diverse peoples, a tapestry of languages, religions, and customs woven together under one rule. You walk through lively neighborhoods where Armenian merchants chat with Jewish scholars, and Sufi mystics offer blessings alongside Christian monks. Historians still argue how much religious tolerance was a personal conviction versus a pragmatic policy, but it's clear Suleiman fostered a culture where many faiths could coexist peacefully. You feel the gentle harmony in the air, like a soft melody played on a ney flute, delicate but persistent. A little-known detail, Suleiman appointed officials from various backgrounds, including non-Muslims, to key positions in administration, showing a nuanced approach to governance that went beyond simple tolerance. You imagine these officials moving through the palace corridors, their presence a quiet testament to the empire's complexity. As you stroll through Istanbul's neighborhoods, you notice places of worship standing side by side, mosques with their slender minarets, churches with domes gleaming in the sun, and synagogues adorned with intricate carvings. The city's rhythm is a blend of call to prayer, church bells, and whispered prayers, each adding a layer to the peaceful coexistence. In private audiences, Suleiman listens carefully to leaders of different communities, his tone gentle but firm, seeking ways to maintain unity without erasing identity. The empire's strength lies in this delicate balance, a dance of respect and negotiation that unfolds daily. You catch the scent of fresh bread from bakeries run by families who have lived here for generations, and hear children laughing in the streets, their voices a reminder of life continuing quietly amidst political power. At sunset, you stand with Suleiman on a balcony overlooking the city, watching lanterns flicker to life and stars emerge in the deepening sky. The Golden Age is not just a tale of rulers and battles, but of ordinary lives woven together with care and respect. This moment, peaceful and enduring, feels like the very heartbeat of the empire, a gentle reminder that even in vast power, humanity's quiet threads hold everything together. The gentle hum of the palace kitchen fills the air as Suleiman turns his attention to the flavors and traditions that nourish his empire. You follow the slow rhythms of cooks preparing fragrant stews, fresh breads, and sweet pastries, each dish a reflection of the diverse lands under his rule. Historians still debate the origins of many Ottoman recipes, but it's as clear that the empire's cuisine is a melting pot of influences, from Central Asia to the Mediterranean, blending spices, herbs, and techniques into a rich culinary tapestry. You can almost taste the warm, cinnamon-infused rice, and the tender lamb slow-cooked in earthen pots. A little-known detail, Suleiman is said to have enjoyed simple meals with his family, away from the formality of the court, savoring dishes like stuffed grape leaves and yogurt-based sauces. You imagine the soft clatter of plates and quiet conversations, a rare glimpse into the Sultan's private life. You wander through the palace kitchens, where copper pots gleam and the scent of freshly ground spices drifts like a gentle breeze. The cooks work with practiced care, knowing their role is not just to feed but to uphold a tradition of hospitality and abundance. Outside, street vendors prepare treats like roasted chestnuts and sweet halva, their coals blending with the laughter of children and the soft murmur of evening prayers. Food is a language here, spoken through shared meals and festive gatherings. In the Sultan's gardens, tables are set with delicacies and fine wine, where conversations flow easily beneath the shade of fig trees. Suleiman's love for poetry and music often accompanies these dinners, creating an atmosphere where senses and souls are both nourished. As night falls, you feel the warmth of the kitchen fires fading into a peaceful calm, the palace settling into a quiet lull. The Golden Age reveals itself not only in grand achievements, but in these intimate moments of care, flavor, and connection, a feast for the body and spirit alike. The palace corridors grow hushed as Suleiman reflects on his personal faith, a steady current beneath the tides of empire. You follow him to a quiet chamber where the soft glow of oil lamps illuminates the delicate patterns of Quranic calligraphy adorning the walls, a sacred space for meditation and prayer. Historians still discuss the extent to which Suleiman's spirituality influenced his rule, but it is clear that faith offered him solace and guidance amid the immense responsibilities he bore. You sense the calm that descends upon him as he kneels in prayer, the whispered verses blending with the distant echo of the city's evening calls to prayer. A little-known detail, Suleiman personally commissioned many religious scholars and Sufi mystics, believing that their wisdom would help nurture the empire's moral fabric. You imagine the soft rustle of robes and the gentle murmur of teachings in serene gardens beyond the palace walls. In this quiet chamber, you notice the subtle scent of rosewater and burning incense, creating an atmosphere of calm reflection. The Sultan's devotion is both private and profound, a reminder that behind the throne lies a man seeking peace and understanding. Beyond rituals, faith is woven into daily life, guiding decisions, inspiring art, and fostering a sense of community. Suleiman's era is marked by beautiful mosques and schools, where learning and worship coexist in harmony. You walk with him through the peaceful courtyards at dawn, the soft light catching the intricate stonework and casting delicate shadows. The empire's spiritual heartbeat is steady and strong, a gentle rhythm underscoring its golden age. As night deepens, you feel the quiet strength of this faith settling over the palace like a soft blanket, wrapping everything in a serene embrace. Suleiman's journey is as much inward as outward, a path marked by devotion, wisdom, and quiet courage. The final years of Suleiman's reign unfold with a quiet dignity, a slow fading of light that still glows warmly across the empire. You walk beside him through the peaceful gardens, where the scent of lavender and thyme mingles with the soft hum of evening insects. The empire he shaped stands strong, but time reminds all things to change. Historians still debate the exact circumstances of Suleiman's passing and how the empire shifted after, but what remains certain is the lasting impression of his leadership. A golden age defined not just by power, but by culture, law, and humanity. You imagine the gentle closing of palace doors, the final quiet moments as the Sultan reflects on a life fully lived. A little-known detail: Suleiman's tomb, resting in the Suleimani Mosque complex, was designed by his beloved architect Sinan to inspire peace and contemplation, a place where the weight of history seems to soften into stillness. You picture the calm space, where visitors today find a moment of quiet in the bustle of Istanbul. As you take a slow walk through the courtyard, the gentle clatter of footsteps on stone is the only sound, a reminder that even the greatest lives move toward rest. The empire continues, shaped by those who came before, carrying forward the ideals Suleiman held dear. The golden age may have passed, but its light lingers in the art, the laws, the stories, and the quiet moments shared between ruler and people. You feel a sense of closure, as if the empire itself exhales, settling into the calm of night. Now, as the stars twinkle above and the city sleeps, you are gently reminded that history is not just a series of events, but a tapestry woven with patience, care, and quiet strength. Suleiman's story fades softly into the night, leaving behind a legacy to dream on. And now, as the story of Suleiman's life comes to a close, feel yourself sinking deeper into calm. The palace lights dim, the gardens grow quiet, and the steady rhythm of the Bosphorus soothes your thoughts. You have walked beside a ruler whose days were filled with great triumphs and tender moments alike, a life that embraced the full range of human experience. There is a gentle peace in knowing that even the mightiest leaders rest, and that their stories become soft whispers in the wind, carrying lessons and beauty across time. Let your breath slow, your muscles relax, and your mind float gently on the soft currents of history. Tonight, Suleiman's golden age becomes a quiet lullaby, a warm memory to hold as you drift toward sleep. May your dreams be peaceful, and your rest deep and renewing. Good night.